John Meuret from Meuret Grain Company in Brunswick, Nebraska is our corn and soybean market analyst this week. Ratings from the U.S. Department of Agriculture show the 2017 corn and soybean crops mostly holding steady ahead of the agency's June 30th reports on grain stocks and acreage. Those estimates, scheduled for release at 11 a.m. Central Time Friday, will tally corn and soybeans on hand as of June 1st and project how many acres of each farmers planted this season. Prices for both commodities have been struggling to gain traction. The July corn futures contract after Wednesday's close was its lowest since the first of the month, while July soybeans were the weakest since May 30th. We talked with John Tuesday afternoon from Norfolk about markets leading up to Friday's reports, but we began by asking about current conditions in his area of northeast Nebraska.
Jeff, we're a little dry. I mean, everybody's grumbled a little. There was a little rain late last week come through, but it was pretty spotty in nature, and I think everybody's ready for a good ½ inch to an inch, soak us up a little bit. So overall, not bad, but could use a rain.
Which areas of the country do you think are receiving the most focus right now?
You know, I think there's two main focuses, and to me the biggest one is North Dakota and South Dakota and their dryness. The second area is probably going to be Eastern Corn Belt. They got a really late start because it was overly wet, and now they have gotten a little more rain to soften things up again. So,
how heavily do you think Friday's reports either are or will weigh on markets?
Well, the reports are always movers, Jeff, and it's been extremely calm. You know, even though it feels like they've been big moves, historically they haven't been. Next week's report's going to be a mover. You know, we're going to get to see the fresh acres again. Certainly the funds have lightened up and have made themselves somewhat neutral. So you'd have to expect that whatever the numbers are, the funds will come in guns a-blazing.
Do you believe the USDA will make a noticeable change on acres?
I don't. I don't think there's going to be much change at all. The farmer had his mind made up, and I think he's stuck with that for the most part. Maybe a little bit more prevent plant acres, but I think what we have for prevent plant were extra acres to begin with. So the net's going to be not a big change.
How useful will that stocks number be with a little bit of a price rally here in June?
I think it's still a viable number. I don't think there's anything wrong with looking at that. Certainly some bushels moved off the farm into commercial hands, but ownership, both on the farm and in the commercial, are still relatively large for this time of year.
So from your perspective, what has demand been like from the end user?
I still say soft, Jeff, and part of the problem is it was a big crop to begin with. And the other problem is that we're in Nebraska, so the Nebraska bushels are going to be some of the last bushels that get exported out of the country or used in ethanol. So we are using corn, it's getting cleaned up from other cheaper origins, and then they'll come to Nebraska.
Describe that export demand.
It's routine. You know, I don't think there's anything real special about it. You're doing some Asian business, you're doing some Mexican business, very much front loaded. You know, corn is cheaper today than it is in 3 months and 6 months and 9 months, and so we've changed from 2 years ago going hand to mouth to maybe buying ahead a little bit. So it feels good, it's just not enough to get rid of the carryout yet.
What about those export competitors, specifically Brazil?
Brazil last week got really close to U.S. corn competition going to Asia, Japan specifically, but the Brazilians just keep cheaping it up to make sure they can get that business. So we thought we were going to be in the driver's seat for about a day, and then Brazil says, no, we're going to sell that corn. So they are quite aggressive.
Is the slump in crude oil prices a danger to ethanol?
I think definitely, Jeff. I think gasoline underneath $2 over a period of time is going to be a danger. We know we're going to blend 10%. Can we get it to that 15 levels up to the people in D.C.? Crude oil is going to hurt us, and that discretionary blending, that last piece of the blending, is the key until they change the mandate.
How much of an impact do those price fluctuations have on ethanol margins?
You know, I think big. I believe if crude oil's down underneath $40, you're going to see some slowing of some ethanol plants. And you already have contracted the margin substantially the last 60 days. If we continue to see that slide, I think we'll darken some other plants. And we don't need that. We talked about demand, and we need ethanol to stay strong.
All right, let's talk about your price outlook. First in corn, where do you think the market goes?
I don't think anywhere, Jeff. I think we're stuck in the same range that we've been for 6 months. We maybe thought 10 days ago we'd perk up a little bit, and it tried on the back of wheat, and I just don't think it's got enough muster to go. We've had an extremely large change of ownership from the funds back to the farmer to the commercial, and now I think we sit still and wait for something else to drive us. So that's my corn outlook. We're sideways for 60 days here.
What does that mean for possible selling strategies?
I think you got to sell forward. You stretch out, and if you sell a year from now and you can sell futures above $4, you do it. And I think if you set and do nothing, you're going to be selling, spot futures at 370 to 380.
And your outlook for soybeans?
Soybeans, I want to be a little friendly. We have raised a mammoth crop. South America's raised a mammoth crop, and yet we still have soybeans that are relatively high in the big scheme of it. So I think we're going to see something sometime this summer to give us a rally on beans, and I would estimate $1, $1.50. So we may go to 9 before we go to 10.5, but I think it's going to make that move.
And finally, John, to wrap up, tell me how basis has been moving in your area.
It's just done nothing, Jeff. It has been so quiet. We saw a little seasonal increase in late May, and then it softened up from there. You just got too much corn around, and demand is too soft. So we hope that it can continue to appreciate somewhat through the summer, but it doesn't look good.